Hello brothers and welcome to Sigma Old Man channel. Never mistake my kindness for weakness. I am kind to everyone, but when someone is unkind to me, weak is not what you are going to remember about me. Al Capone. There's a reason why people regret pushing the quiet ones too far. Studies show that those who operate in silence often have the sharpest minds, the most controlled tempers, and, when necessary, the deadliest exits. Sigma males don't explode when they've had enough. They don't scream, beg, or demand respect. They just stop playing nice, and that's when everything shifts. One day he's the calm, composed guy who lets things slide. The next he's emotionally untouchable, completely unbothered and watching, as the people who underestimated him scramble to fix what they broke. No warnings, no negotiations, just an unshakable decision that leaves people questioning if they ever really knew him at all. And here's the kicker, he's not doing it to teach anyone a lesson, he simply does not care anymore. Number one, he becomes a walking reminder of what they lost. When a Sigma male is done playing nice, the people who lost him don't just feel his absence, they see him thriving without them, and that stings more than anything else. It's not about revenge, it's not about proving a point. It's about the brutal reality that they were never as important to him as they assumed. At first, they don't believe it. They expect him to come back, to check in, to offer one last olive branch, but the silence is deafening. No messages, no subtle hints of regret, nothing. While they're busy wondering what happened, he's already moved on, leveling up in ways they never expected. What makes it worse is that his detachment isn't forced. He's not pretending to be unbothered. He is unbothered, and that's what eats away at them the most. People love to think they have an impact, that their presence leaves a mark. But when a Sigma male walks away, it's as if they never existed in his world. There's no grudge, no lingering bitterness, just pure, effortless indifference. Then they start noticing something that really twists the knife. He's doing better. His career is skyrocketing, his social life is thriving, and there's a different energy around him, calm, focused, unstoppable. He looks lighter, freer, like a man who finally removed dead weight from his life. And deep down, they know exactly who that dead weight was. They might try to reach out, test the waters, see if he'll acknowledge them, but there's no hostility in his response, just a cold, polite distance that makes it clear. They are nothing more than a page he turned without a second thought. And that's when reality hits. He never needed them. If anything, they needed him. But now it's too late, he's already gone. And the only thing they have left is the regret of taking his presence for granted. Number two, people who took him for granted get a reality check. At first, they don't even notice he's gone. They assume he'll be back, ready to clean up their messes like always. But then, something strange happens. Things that used to run smoothly start falling apart. Problems that were once handled effortlessly now turn into full-blown disasters. And suddenly the realization hits. He was the silent force holding everything together, and now that he's gone, the cracks are too obvious to ignore. People who took his patience and reliability for granted start feeling the weight of his absence in ways they never expected. They were so used to him stepping in without being asked, offering solutions without seeking credit, and keeping the chaos in check without making a fuss. Now they're left scrambling to do what he once did so effortlessly and failing miserably. Some will try to downplay it, acting as if nothing has changed. Others will pretend they never really needed him in the first place. But deep down they know the truth. They underestimated him. They assumed he would always be there, that his kindness was an endless resource, that his willingness to help was just part of who he was. What they failed to realize is that even the most patient man has his limits, and when a Sigma male is done, he is done. They might reach out hoping for a second chance, a way to pull him back into the role they once expected him to play. But the answer is silence, or worse, a polite, distant response that makes it clear they no longer have access to him. The worst part, he doesn't even seem angry, he's just moved on without a single glance back. And that's when they truly understand what they lost. Number three, he's no longer a safe space for people's problems. At first, they don't get it. They reach out like they always have, ready to spill their problems, expecting him to be the same patient listener who offers wisdom without asking for anything in return. But something is different. His responses are shorter, less invested. The deep understanding presence they once relied on feels distant, disconnected, and then it clicks. The emotional safety net is gone. For so long he absorbed the negativity of others, carrying their burdens like they were his own. People confided in him not because they valued him, but because they knew he would listen without judgment. They mistook his patience for an obligation, assuming he would always be available, always willing to be their therapist without ever asking for anything in return. But now, he's done. The energy drain was never mutual. He was expected to provide clarity, comfort, and solutions while getting nothing but exhaustion in return. The one time he needed support, silence. That was the wake-up call. He realized that while he had been a safe space for everyone else, no one had ever been a safe space for him, and so he stopped playing that role. Now, when people come to him with their endless drama and emotional baggage, they're met with something unfamiliar: boundaries. Not cruelty, not anger, just a quiet refusal to be their emotional sponge. They start feeling the weight of their own chaos, realizing that without him to absorb it, they actually have to deal with it themselves. And that's when the panic sets in. Some try to guilt him back in, reminding him of how much they've always counted on him. Others lash out, accusing him of being cold, distant, or selfish. But he doesn't react, he doesn't explain. He just keeps his peace because he finally understands something they never did. His energy is his own, and he refuses to waste it on people who only remember him when they need a place to unload. Number 4, his presence becomes a luxury, not a given. At first, they don't notice the shift. They assume he's just busy, that he'll eventually circle back like he always does. But time passes and the silence stretches longer than they expected. The once predictable responses become rare, the effortless availability vanishes, and suddenly they're hit with a reality they never saw coming. His presence was never something they were entitled to. It was something he allowed. And now that privilege is gone. They used to think he would always be there, answering calls, making time, offering support without hesitation. They assumed his consistency meant permanence. But what they failed to realize is that a Sigma male never gives more than he's willing to lose. And once he senses that his presence is being taken for granted, he doesn't argue. He doesn't explain. He simply removes it. Now, the same people who barely acknowledged his efforts are suddenly hyper-aware of his absence. The texts that once went answered within minutes now sit on read. The invitations that used to be automatic now don't even reach him, and worst of all, he seems completely fine without them. No bitterness, no passive-aggressive messages. Just a life that continues untouched by their absence. This is where the regret kicks in. They realize he wasn't just there, he added to their lives in ways they never fully appreciated. His insight, his loyalty, his calming energy, it was never an obligation, it was a gift. And now that it's gone, they understand what they lost. They want him back, but there's no way to earn that privilege again, because when a Sigma male decides he's done, he doesn't look back. And nothing makes a person crave someone more than knowing they will never have access to them again. Number 5, he lets people face the consequences they deserve. He used to be the quiet force that kept things from falling apart, the one who stepped in just before disaster struck. Whether it was offering advice, fixing problems, or keeping someone from making a colossal mistake, he did it without expecting gratitude. But gratitude never came, only entitlement. People assumed he'd always be there, cleaning up their messes while they continued making reckless choices. Not anymore. Now, when someone is headed straight for destruction, he doesn't lift a finger. He watches as they stumble into the very chaos he once protected them from. Not because he enjoys their downfall, but because he's done shielding people from the consequences they chose. If they ignored his advice, dismissed his warnings, and took his help for granted, then they can deal with the reality they created. And when the inevitable happens, when everything falls apart and they're looking around for someone to save them, they'll find nothing but silence. No last-minute rescue, no words of wisdom to soften the blow, just the full weight of their own decisions crashing down on them. That's when they realize the truth. He wasn't a backup plan. He wasn't a safety net. He was the one thing standing between them and disaster, and they never even saw it. Some will be furious, accusing him of being heartless, selfish, or cruel. But what they don't understand is that stepping aside was the kindest thing he could do, because sometimes the only way people learn is through pain. And a Sigma male knows that the greatest lesson is one that comes with no shortcuts, no second chances, and no one left to blame but themselves. Number 6, people start regretting how they treated him. At first, they don't think much of it. They assume he'll be back, that his silence is temporary, that he just needs time to cool off. But as days turn into weeks and weeks into months, reality sinks in. He's really gone. No lingering resentment, no dramatic exits, just a quiet disappearance that leaves a void they never expected to feel. Then comes the regret, the slow, creeping realization that they had something rare, someone who listened without judgment, who supported without conditions, who gave without keeping score. And they wasted it. They mistook his patience for passivity, his loyalty for obligation, his kindness for weakness. They assumed he would always be there because he never asked for much in return. But now that he's no longer in their lives, they finally see what he was worth. They start replaying conversations, remembering moments when he was there for them. Times when they should have reciprocated but didn't. The late-night talks, the quiet advice, the unwavering support, things they took for granted suddenly feel like luxuries they'll never have again. And the worst part? There's no way to fix it. They might try reaching out, offering half-hearted apologies, hoping for another chance. But the message is either ignored or met with a polite, distant response that makes it painfully clear he has moved on. He's not angry. He's not bitter. He just doesn't care anymore. And that's what makes the regret unbearable. Because when a Sigma male walks away, he doesn't leave room for second chances. He doesn't give people the satisfaction of knowing they still have an emotional hold on him. He simply becomes untouchable, out of reach, out of sight, and worst of all, out of their lives, forever. And for the ones who took him for granted, that's a loss they'll never stop feeling. Number 7, his detachment feels unbreakable. They expect a reaction, a fight, an argument, a moment of weakness, something that proves he still cares, that he's still emotionally invested. But they get nothing, no anger, no resentment, no dramatic goodbye, just silence. And that silence, it's terrifying, because it means they no longer have any influence over him. He doesn't block them out of spite, doesn't throw insults, doesn't waste energy proving a point. He simply stops engaging. He's done explaining, done justifying, done giving people access to emotions they never valued in the first place. And that's when it hits them. He's gone in a way that feels irreversible. Not just physically, but emotionally. The connection they assumed was unshakable has vanished without a trace. People scramble to find cracks in his armor, some way to pull him back in. They try guilt, nostalgia, even provocation. Anything to get a rise out of him. But nothing works. They call, he doesn't answer. They send a long-winded message. He leaves it on read. They bring up the past, hoping to stir something inside him, but he responds like it's ancient history, because to him it is, and that's what makes his detachment so unsettling. It's not forced, it's not an act, it's real. He's not suppressing emotions, he's simply free from them. He doesn't need closure, doesn't need revenge, doesn't even need them to understand what they did. He's moved on, and the fact that they haven't is their problem, not his. That's the final blow, not the loss of contact, not the absence of his support, but the realization that he doesn't even think about them anymore. They could beg, they could scream, they could pretend none of it happened, but it wouldn't matter. Because when a Sigma male lets go, he lets go completely. And nothing is more untouchable than a man who truly no longer cares. Number 8, people realize he was never weak, just patient. For so long, they thought they had the upper hand. They saw his silence as submission, his patience as weakness. They assumed he put up with disrespect, irresponsibility, or manipulation because he had to. But then, without warning, he's gone. No fight, no negotiation, just a quiet, decisive exit. And that's when they realize he was never weak. He was just choosing not to react. Every time he let something slide, it wasn't because he lacked strength, it was because he didn't see the point in unnecessary conflict. Every time he listened instead of arguing, it wasn't because he was afraid, it was because he knew his energy was too valuable to waste. He wasn't trapped, obligated, or helpless, he was just giving people the chance to act right, and when they didn't, he walked away without hesitation. Now, the ones who mistook his patience for powerlessness are left stunned. They never expected him to enforce boundaries so effortlessly. They never thought he'd be the one to leave them behind. They assumed he needed them, but the truth is he was always operating from a place of choice. He could have left at any moment. He just gave them the benefit of the doubt for a while. That's what makes the reality so painful for them. He wasn't stuck. He was observing. He wasn't powerless. He was allowing things to play out. And now that he's gone, they have to face the cold truth. The only reason they got away with anything was because he let them. The second he decided they were no longer worth his time, they lost access to him forever. No warnings, no second chances. Just the realization that the man they underestimated was in control the entire time. Number 9, he never looks back because he doesn't need to. He doesn't replay old conversations, doesn't sit around wondering what if, and definitely doesn't waste time hoping people will change. Once he's done, not out of bitterness, not out of spite, but because he genuinely has no reason to look back. What's behind him no longer serves him, and a Sigma male isn't the type to cling to dead weight. People expect some kind of hesitation, some sign that he still cares. But they get nothing, no passive-aggressive posts, no late-night texts, no indirect jabs, just silence. He's not healing from the loss because to him it wasn't a loss. It was a necessary shift, a decision to remove what no longer aligned with his path. And now, he walks forward without so much as a backward glance. This is what unsettles people the most. They assumed he'd always be there, that eventually he'd circle back like everyone else does. But a Sigma male doesn't operate on desperation or nostalgia. He doesn't seek closure because he doesn't need it. He doesn't give people the satisfaction of knowing they still occupy space in his mind. Because they don't. They were a chapter, one he closed without regret, and the longer he stays gone, the more people realize the brutal truth. He never needed them in the first place. He gave his kindness freely, but it was never owed. He offered loyalty, but it wasn't binding. He was present by choice, not obligation. And now that choice has changed. He moves forward with the same quiet confidence he always had, only now with an unshakable certainty that he will never again waste his energy on those who didn't deserve it. Number 10, he withdraws and people feel it instantly. At first, people don't quite understand what's changed. They go about their usual routines, expecting everything to flow as it always has, but something feels off. Conversations don't hit the same. The group dynamic feels shaky. The unspoken balance that held things together, gone. That's when it clicks. He's not there anymore. And without him, the cracks start to show. He was never the loudest voice in the room, never the one demanding attention, but his presence had a way of keeping things in check. He diffused tension before it escalated, provided logic when emotions ran high, and offered perspective when everyone else was caught up in their own noise. People never noticed how much they relied on him until they had to function without him. Now, conflicts that he once smoothed over spiral into full-blown chaos. The petty drama he quietly neutralized starts to consume the group. The ones who used to lean on his advice suddenly feel lost. The stability they once took for granted. Now it's painfully clear that he was the one holding it all together. Some will pretend they don't care. They'll act like his absence doesn't matter, like he was just another person in the background. But deep down, they feel it. The difference is undeniable, and the worst part, they can't just bring him back, because once a Sigma male withdraws, it's not to get attention or prove a point. It's because he meant to leave. And nothing they say or do will change that. When a Sigma male is done playing nice, he doesn't raise his voice, throw tantrums, or seek revenge. He simply removes himself, physically, emotionally, and mentally. And that absence, it speaks louder than anything he could ever say. The people who took him for granted feel the shift instantly. The ones who mistook his patience for weakness now understand that he was always in control. And the ones who relied on his quiet strength, they're left scrambling, realizing too late that he was the foundation holding everything together. But the most powerful part, he doesn't look back. There's no lingering resentment, no unfinished business, no second chances. He moves forward with the same quiet confidence he always had, only now with a deeper understanding of who truly deserves his energy. And once he's gone, there's no undoing it. No way to reclaim his presence, no way to earn back what was lost. That's the brutal beauty of a Sigma male. When he chooses to walk away, he does it with such certainty, such finality, that those left behind aren't just missing a person. They're missing the balance. the wisdom, the silent force that kept everything from falling apart. And by the time they realize it, he's already too far ahead to even notice. If this hit home, then you already know the power of a Sigma male's silence. Now, don't stay silent on this video. Hit that like button, drop a comment, and let me know your thoughts. And if you want more brutally honest, no-nonsense content like this, subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss out. Oh, and share this with someone who needs to hear it, whether they're the Sigma male who's done playing nice or the ones feeling the consequences. Either way, the message will be received. Bye for now, and see you in the next video.